Hi, welcome to Actual Spinster. Today I'm going to do a video that I did maybe like a year, 2 years ago, like a year and a half ago, which is called Read One, Want More, and I'm going to talk about some authors who I've read one book from that I want to read more from. Pretty self-explanatory. I think the original maker of this video has made it unavailable, so yeah, I will just leave the person who I first saw do it in the description box. The first person is Miriam Karpilov, whose book Diary of a Lonely Girl I read last month, and I have actually organised a buddy read with, well, I almost said Judith, but that's the name of the book that I next want to read from her, but with Sean from Storytime. And this is a translated book by Jessica Curzon, and Judith is also translated by Jessica Curzon. So I do think that having access to more of her work is reliant at the moment for me on translation, so that obviously kind of tempers how much of her work I can access, I guess, but I'm pretty sure she wrote a whole bunch of different things, so if more of it is translated, I'd love to read it. But yeah, the next one I'm going to read from her is Judith, as soon as it arrives. The next is an author called May Sinclair, who I've read this one book from, The Tree of Heaven, which is a book from 1917 about the world in 1917, as you can imagine probably, and I thought it was really interesting, and I did definitely want to read more of her work. She is a modernist somewhat, but she's quite fringe in a way, except from she did also produce a lot of work and also coined the term stream of consciousness, which is a big deal in modernist lit. So her work is also quite difficult to find, not because of translation, but just because people don't care about her. So, but I do know that there are some old Virago editions, and I think the next one I want to read from her is The Life and Death of Harriet Frene, which I think was published in 1922 actually, so that would be fun to read this year if I can find a copy. The next person only has, as far as I'm aware, one other book, and that's Robin Wall Kimmerer, whose book Braiding Sweetgrass I read last year and then subsequently recommended it all the time and told lots of people to read it. And I really want to read her book about moss, which is maybe called Gathering Moss. I personally fucking love moss, so I feel like it could really be the book for me. Then I've got E.H. Young, who wrote Miss Mole, which I read last month too, and who I actually do have another book by her on, I don't think it's here, but I have a copy of it, which is called Jenny Wren. She wrote quite a list of things too, so there's lots of things to read. I was interested in The Vicar's Daughter, and she does also have a book that was published in this editions, in the British Library Women Writers series, which is called Chatterton Square, but that's a bit of a later work. I think it was from the 40s. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. I just felt like it was kind of dense in a nice way, and sort of generous and meaty in the way it wrote about everyday life, and I really loved that. So yeah, I'd be interested to see what else she has written. I also last year spoke a lot about Saidiya Hartman's Beautiful Lives. Wayward Lives, Beautiful Experiments. Oh, I read that book last year, as you will probably have known, and I also recommended it to many people, and I know Saidiya Hartman has a couple books out, maybe not loads but some, and one that specifically I have my eye on is Lose Your Mother, which is about, I think, mothering and also the transatlantic slave route and history and care and kin and relationships, and maybe a family abolition kind of vibe too, I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, it just sounds really interesting and really difficult, I think, to read, but something that I will try to read at some point, maybe not this year, but at some point. Another person who I read a book from last year is Jamaica Kincaid, and I read Lucy, and as you will know if you watch this channel, I loved Lucy, and from her I don't have a specific one that I'm interested in reading first, just because I don't really see her books around physically, so I'm kind of just waiting to see the next one, I guess. But I do have my eye on the autobiography of my mother, and I want to read, is it A Small Place, which is, I think, non-fiction about tourism and colonialism, but I'm mostly just, I'm interested in reading whatever she writes. I do have one other author to mention, but I feel it's maybe slightly cheating because they only have one other book out, and that's Alina Rather, who wrote Sisters of the Vast Black, which was Nuns in Space, and the sequel to that book, Sisters of the Forsaken Stars, I think, just came out or is coming out soon, and I want to read that. I do feel I have a bit of a different relationship with Nuns in Space kind of vibe, because I did think about being a nun for a while, but I'm not going to be a nun. I just felt very drawn to the idea of nuns and to nun culture. I don't know, obviously it's quite like a lesbian space, but it's also like extremely homophobic in lots of ways, so it's like that was like very tantalizing in a way, because I was like drawn towards it but also repelled a bit. And like, anyway, that's not really that relevant to Sisters of the Vast Black, but like there are queer nuns in it, which is really lovely. Yeah, but anyway, that wasn't the point. The point is that this next book is one I want to read. I think it's also a novella, which the first book was too, so I'm hoping to read that soon. I think those are sort of the main authors that I think this really applies to. If you have any thoughts on them, let me know. It's not like a tag video, but like if you want to treat it as such, like obviously like feel free to. I think that's everything. I hope you have a nice day, and yeah, I'll talk to you next time. Bye!